Welcome to part 2 of the episode, which is talking about what the theory on hidden crises. Alan, did you like the last discussion?
Yeah, it was actually quite good.
What did you learn?
What I learned?
Yeah.
Mostly about what our guest, of course, is doing out there. And it's always amazing to hear the biggest part when you're advocating is the ignorance. The weird things people say. So if someone says that a dog is going to see your pad and if it sees it, you won't, it's just madness. It's crazy.
You should put a backing sound when she mentions that. Our next guest is Don Magezi. Is it Magezi?
Magezi.
Okay, sometimes I mispronounce people's names, like I was calling the other individual who was here, Raboni. Yeah, formerly called Lisa. But welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're going to discuss something which is near and dear to our lives. But before we do that, you're wearing a very fancy shirt. It says
to
Raremark
represent Raremark Foundation.
Yes. What is Raremark Foundation?
As you know, our very good friend, Josey,
Friend of the show.
She kind of got us together, a very good team. She was very selective about her friends, very intentional. We both have sickle cell, so we co-founded this foundation to raise awareness about sickle cell anemia. Yeah, and that is our primary purpose. Secondary purpose is to help as many people as we can, those less fortunate than we are. Where that comes to raising funds for hip replacements or medication, stuff like that.
Do you want to tell us where you were yesterday night?
I was out promoting Raremark.
Tell us about the event yesterday.
Oh, you have...
Yeah, that's what
Whenever Alan's smiling,
what were you talking about?
What were you doing last night?
Oh, okay. So last night we were nominated for Uganda Marketing Excellence Awards. And unfortunately, we didn't win, but it was great to be recognized for our efforts. We're up against some really big guys with a lot of money. Centenary, Stanbic, MTN. But no, it really felt really good to be recognized for.
Yeah.
We've put in a lot of work this year. I'm very proud of our team, Raremark and Digimark. Yeah, okay. So it was amazing.
So I'm just curious. In this last year, like you've said, you're proud of the work that has been done. I've done my best to watch as many of the episodes as possible, to learn as much as possible, shared it with people in my circles. And the thing that I get the most is most people going, hey, I didn't know that these are the things that are needed for intervention. Like the last episode that I watched, which was a discussion on self-medication. And the impression I think most people had was no, people know what they're supposed to have. And then they're able to measure and then say this is going to be dangerous. And the thing I got was it's very difficult to put yourself in the mindset of if you have a chronic illness or if you are in pain and you need relief, some of the decisions that you're making there are not necessarily going to be decisions that are going to be long-term benefit. You're just there's an issue that I need to deal with here. So for me, I think the biggest revelation has been most people understanding how much they don't know and how much they had assumed. But in your own words, what do you feel the impact has been like?
Yeah, so over the past year, more specifically, we've been having, we call them activations, screening activations. And the first half of it, we have a little lecture, talk, presentation. And what's really interesting is people really don't know much about sickle cell. We've got some really ridiculous questions.
Really?
Yeah. So I think our impact is sharing our knowledge, shedding light on the disease. It's not a death sentence as much as many people think. So I think that's our biggest impact so far, just educating.
Okay. Okay. When I was much younger, there's someone in the corner there laughing. She's saying much younger as like an adult 20 years ago. Yeah, when I was much younger.
In the 80s. Late 80s.
I hate everyone here. One of the first things I learned there was it was called George, and he was in my primary school class. And every time he used to come back, there was this dark thing the teacher used to say of like, "Hey, you're back." I used to be like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like anytime he comes back, it's something for us to rejoice. So now that was the early sort of frame that I had, like, oh, if someone has this, like you said, it's a death sentence. And the question I used to have then is like, why are you coming to school? Why shouldn't you enjoy your life? So the 2 points of information were not clicking for me. Like, yeah, he's here, he's coming to school, he's, hanging out with the rest of us. And I think the school did a very good job of like saying, don't treat anyone any differently, but also helping us to understand, like, if, he's having, he used to have seizures every now and then, we had to know how to intervene, how to, understand. I think it was called
hydroxyurea.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there was a sort of, not a white labeled version, but like a different version of it, and the dosages were different. And I remember them telling us, like, this is how it's supposed to be administered. If you're not with an adult, don't get it. Even things like folic acid. So there were, little bits of information that were given to us, but it was just about treating the symptoms, or at least the effects. But I didn't understand, how do you extend someone's life? What kind of care you're supposed to go through? So, like, if you were to imagine someone is hearing this for the first time, what are the basics that someone should know? Maybe starting from the screening. How does someone, sort of find out if they're a carrier, if someone in their family might be having it, and then, maybe just some general facts about the condition.
Yeah, screening is very important, first of all. I feel like that should be mandatory before anyone gets married, or when they get into a relationship, even before marriage. But that would be the first preventative measure. After that, you have a child, sickle cell, extending their life. It's not that hard, really. Like you mentioned, folic acid, hydroxyurea. Easiest way to avoid crises, hydration, very important. You can see, well, I have my jug over there. I don't have it right here. So I drink like 5 liters a day, 5 to 6. Avoiding extreme temperatures, hot, cold. Don't wear myself out physically. So just small things like that prevent the crises. Because the crises get really bad. They can damage limbs. Personally, I have 2 hip replacements. They can damage organs. So just being really careful from a young age, educating your child as a caregiver. Personally, I don't think it's that hard. In our group, we have a 65-year-old with a very healthy family. He rarely gets sick because he's just on top of his routine. Yeah.
Become part of the lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. Yeah. You just have to embrace the lifestyle. You just have to know your limits.
Is there a psychological effect? I mean, the episode where, I was speaking to Josey about it, one of the things she said is, there's this extra burden of things I have to think about that other people don't think about. And she was saying it as, I don't want to be that downer when, hey, we had planned to go out, and then like, oh, the weather is changing. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to show up.
Yeah.
And for someone who's not in the know, they are just like, hey man, why are you flaking on this thing and you're not showing up? And her point was, I just feel frustrated having to explain to everyone. Then I was thinking about it going, when you're younger, because the question might be, at least for me, like, why can't I just hang out like everyone else? For everyone else, it just seems like you were born on second base and you're moving. Like, I have to do all these extra things to just get there. So, I've always wondered about like the sort of psychological support, the kind of ways in which you prevent yourself from getting into like a really dark place?
Yeah, the mental toll, the psychological toll can get really heavy. Especially as a child, because you feel like you're just being excluded from everything. So you start thinking like, why me? Why me? Why am I being excluded? I know I'm different, but am I that different? But as you grow older, you start to understand your condition. I think the toll becomes a bit less, but it's always there. Like, as Josey mentioned, as soon as I wake up, I'm like, have checked the weather. What's it going to be today? If you look at my boot, I have like jackets, I have sweaters, I have everything that I'll need in case the weather changes. So there's just so many extra things to think about. Yeah. So it's always on your mind. Always on your mind. What during the day could cause a crisis?
And from a socioeconomic standpoint, we were talking to Lisa earlier about like period poverty. And to me, there was a convo Alan and I were having yesterday about privilege. And in the conversation, talking about some people have privilege and that pretty privilege. Someone might be taller, and that is also considered. There's someone there thinking that she's very pretty. I don't understand. Yeah. You might be thinking correctly. Please, pola. But to me, I think ultimately, the closer you get to means of subsistence, means of survival, there's certain things you don't have to think about. So when I came for the gala the first time, the thing that broke my heart was, if someone is not economically able to afford the medication, or they have to work a job where they're not being given the, sort of space to understand that I may not be able to show up when things are not the best. I may not be able to have the physical labor every day be consistent to the degree that I want to. I would think they disproportionately might be having a much harder time dealing with the condition. And one of the things I liked about Raremark was, sort of the partnership to be able to say, how can people get access to drugs? So I would just like you to talk about how can these thousands of people sort of work with Raremark? How can we support the work that you're doing to make it, a little bit more possible for warriors to live their lives, their best lives?
First of all, we need money.
Santa, if there's anything here, you can.
No, but first and foremost, just it would be really helpful if we could partner with more corporate organizations that have a large reach, so we could educate as many people as possible.
What does that partnership look like? Like, I think you.
For example, like Britam, we approached Britam, they're really receptive. So they let us give the lecture I was talking about, the presentation, a blood drive and screening. I think we screened over 75 people.
Okay.
And a large percentage of them were carriers, they didn't know, or some of them knew.
What?
Yeah, it's crazy. Actually, in Kampala, from the stats were found out this year.
Okay.
The last time there was a census was in 2006, I think.
We had the census. Although the figures were... Yeah. So 2006, those were the ones which we are using now. They weren't verified.
They said in Kampala, the percentage of people who are carriers was about 16%. What we've found, it's about 25%. So imagine like 1 in every 4 people, whether they know or don't know, are a carrier.
Is there any... This is how I am a nerd. Is there any work, any theories around that? Because I also saw that in Uganda, the figures I saw from UBOS were something like 15,000 baths? 20,000 baths are people with SCD. But predominantly, a lot of the figures were showing coming from Eastern Uganda and I think Northern Uganda. Now, what I wanted to read in was, okay, you're giving us that information. What does that mean? What are the correlations? Is it just a correlation? Because at the same time, when I was looking at access to services, access to information, like, yeah, Eastern Uganda, Northern Uganda predominantly doesn't have very good health education, health access. And that was the hypothesis. But I'm seeing if the numbers are also growing in Kampala. Is there any rationale around it, or it's just something that we're observing and we're not maybe putting in enough time to study?
I think people are just not putting enough time to study. I'm not going to mention specific. I think there's not enough effort in putting enough time to study. Also, like the populations are growing very fast.
So even as a proportion,
as it grows, obviously the number of people with SCD or carriers is going to increase.
And more people are testing as well.
More people are testing, and like you mentioned before, in certain regions there's lack of access of healthcare or education about preventative measures or how to manage the condition if you do have a child with SCD. A combination of those four, I think is.
So what I found interesting, especially from the first outreach we did, is sometimes you think you're so far away from a situation, far away from cancer, from HIV, until you realize maybe you're part of the community. Because remember, from the first outreach, 2 volunteers found out they were carriers, and like they almost lost it. There's an episode about them. They talk about the whole experience. So how about shed more light on what it means to be a carrier? What that means and what's the next steps, because most people we tested and some were crying, they were afraid because they wouldn't separate between a carrier and actually.
It went from an issue out there in the world to
now it's actually in my home, it's me. Because I remember they called their families, they sent in their kids came, they tested, were also carriers. Their sisters, some were not, some were, so shed some more light on that.
I don't know why people get so scared when they find out they're a carrier. Like,
did you not hear what I said earlier in the day? They were telling us, hey, this guy is around this term. I really think that it's still there, and most people are just, I guess, maybe polite about it. But we're swimming in this hue of, you can tell when people start speaking in hushed tones. Oh, are you okay? That's when you know that they're telling you about now. But no, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, so like, you go, get a simple test, 5-10 minutes, you find out you're a carrier, reach out to your family, they test, reach out to your partner, they test. Being a carrier, there's nothing wrong with you. You're perfectly normal. There is nothing wrong at all. So all you have to do is just make sure like your family knows, your partner knows. There's so many steps you can consider, so many options you can consider when you're going to have a child, if both partners are carriers. There's prenatal testing, there's IVF, there's adoption. A lot of people, when we tested, I had one person, their reaction was just anger at me. I'm like,
I was okay. Now you're here, changing my plans.
Man, like, you're fine. Don't worry. You're okay. But I mean, it's not a big deal.
So let's play out the scenario, right? I'm here thinking, I'm going to marry my young honey. We're going to have 5 kids. I've come through. I've done the test. Yeah, my young honey. I'm an old man. What do you think? Sure, my baby. What do you want me to say? What's the operative term? My comrade. My comrade. My comrade in nuptials. I don't have enough. I have. You know the average age of Ugandan men. I've already lived half my life. Okay, we're talking seriously. So, I do the test and say, I'm a carrier, and so I'm angry. So what am I going to be told? What is because I know like when I first went to get my test to see if I had, because in my family there's a rare condition which has to do, it's a version of like asthma. So my sister, if she gets any anything like some bacteria in her nasal tract, it starts to close up. Now, the test is so rare because it's like in one in however many 100,000 people, and few people have it activated, like pollen will activate it. So, like for her, she's like, I'm so rare, I don't even know who I'm going to talk to about this. What should I do? And the fact that the doctor was able to say, like, no, you're fine. Just, takes these antihistamines. It's not a death sentence. Like, there's a way in which it was de-escalated so that they would understand the condition. So as a carrier, what is the information? Like you've talked about, the options for having children, but like I don't know if you can comment a little bit more about once someone knows, how does their life change? Like how much, what have you seen been the response? What's the response that the person has, and what's the response that you guys have? Because you're giving the information and you're receiving a lot of the responses and the reactions. Yeah. So how do you make it such that, we're all going to go home and we're all going to be fine?
Yeah. Okay, so for example, you come in, you get tested, they give you your result. It's a little card.
Result,
Yeah. I read your card, I tell you, so your result is positive. It's not a big deal. Don't get so worried.
My baby.
Yeah. I know you have a partner, you're worried about your future.
Yeah.
What I first recommend is get your partner tested.
Okay.
Do you have any kids? Yes? No?
Not that I know of.
That you know of. Okay, cool. If you don't have any kids, get your partner tested, and then move on from there. Either she's positive, negative. Like I said, not a big deal. There are measures you can take. Don't worry about it. If you do have kids, get your kids tested also, because, it goes down the line. If they happen to marry someone or something with a partner and have kids, they could have sickle cell.
Increasing the odds.
Yeah, increasing the odds as it goes down the line.
Okay.
So that's always my first thing. Like, don't worry, it's not a big deal. It's not serious. Just go get tested. Get your partner tested. That's the first step.
Okay.
And that's the most important step.
Yeah.
Because you need to know.
Yeah.
You can't just go in blind to a marriage and hope for the best.
Can you plan love?
Like a lot of our parents in the 90s and 80s.
So, is it part of general typical screening that people go through? The general test that people go through? Because I was surprised that it isn't. Like people do the HIV screening, they talk about maybe understanding your blood group. So I thought as long as I'm doing blood tests, wouldn't they run the full gamut of things? So what can we do to get it to become part of it? We have a policy wonk where there's a policy specialist there. She's working on it. You speak to her.
Right now.
Yeah.
I'll give props to the Ministry of Health. They've really been pushing to have it as soon as you get married, like when you're going to get married in church. Like, how you have to have a HIV screen test. I don't know what else they test for. But Ministry of Health is really encouraging and pushing for it to be mandatory.
Okay.
Before you go to church and have the whole ceremony, at least you know your status. So I think that is really, really a big step, a huge step, policy-wise.
Okay. And then education-wise, because, the numbers you've spoken about, right? I would want to be, I don't know if the right word is ally, someone who's able to be supportive. What does someone need to do? How should we learn to be able to say, hey, what should I watch out for? How should I be someone who's supportive without being annoying?
It's 2024, man. There's internet. Educate yourself. It's ChatGPT. Anyway, I encourage
That's ChatGPT. Have you seen his ChatGPT? He's fed it all kinds of funny data.
But no, I would encourage everyone to educate themselves. After that, it's not hard to share what you've learned. Family, friends. It's not that hard. Just share the knowledge that you've learned. One thing I think would really, really benefit the cause is educating kids going into schools, primary, secondary, just so they know, you know, because we never learned about any of this growing up. I didn't know any. I have sickle cell, and I didn't learn about it.
Yeah.
So I think that would help a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We're about to wrap up. I'm thinking about the drives, activations, and things that you're doing. Is there anything that Raremark is doing this time of year? You guys wrapping up to close. I'm going to be trying to get as many people as possible to contribute, not only financially, but also open up their workspaces, open up their ability for people to use the grounds, not only the employees, the clients, to understand something. Is there anything that we think we can do in this period, this Christmas holiday period? Yeah.
We've had a really busy year, so we're kind of just wrapping up podcast episodes, but we're gonna come in really hot next year. Again, going back to screening activations, we would love as many corporate partners to join us. So we're starting off with Stanbic. Thank you very much. And then we'll try to do two every month.
Okay.
But also we're going to try and move outside of Kampala to the regions that don't have that knowledge, access to healthcare, like you said, Eastern, Northern, even Western. Yeah, so I think it's going to be our main focus next year.
Okay.
Just moving outside of Kampala, trying to help as many people as we can who have less access to those.
Okay. So, I mean, for us, when I did mention it to the people I work with, the thought everyone had was, I haven't even thought about doing this. It hadn't even occurred to anyone. So, at least from our side, what we're going to do is like try and push even for our clients, because even as a bank, we've got, hundreds of corporates that we deal with. And I think the disadvantage that we play is often saying, oh no, talk to the expert. And there's something about the abundance of information that's online. There's an episode we're going to do which is just about how do you have a verifiable voice, because right now there are people who come online and have the aesthetic of someone who knows what they're talking about, and they're giving you all kinds of funky stuff, so usually a trusted voice. And I think for us, we're trying to say, like, if we lend our voice, because it matters, the kind of information we put out there, we had to verify. We even said, who are you guys partnering with? What are the medications you're speaking about? And the truth be told, all I did was just share the podcast episodes, and they've been really informative. So people were just watching them and saying, hey, no, these guys are not BSing us, because all kinds of people come in with like, hey, we're trying to help, but behind it, it's just like they're using it as a facade to be able to get some funds. So I'm putting my name to it. He's a serious guy. I know Alan's involved, so you might be questionable. But Alan is actually being sensible. And I think, Ravoni is somewhere in the room. I just wanted to thank you guys for your time. The main reason for me putting together this episode is I want to use a platform which has access to a certain crowd that typically comes in to enjoy entertainment, wants to, get a relief, but also find some way in which they can, positively contribute. If they can contribute with their time, if they can contribute with their networks, but also with their finances. The kind that folds, not the kind that jingles when it folds. I've been told coins are terrible. Excuse me, it's legal tender. But speaking sincerely to my audience, thank you so much for your time and your attention. But this is the one episode that I would hope, please pay attention. Please share this. Follow Raremark, follow Vanire, follow Yambi, follow Ravoni, follow Alan, myself. We're going to be putting out way more information on these things. It doesn't hurt. For the one thing that makes us human is that we are a social being, and it means that if anyone is going through something, we are all going through it to some extent. Just like Alan said, that it's not something that's academic and out there in the world. It's very present and here with us.
Much closer to home than you think.
Alan, you have the last word for this episode. Do you have anything you want to say? The disembodied voice of the show.
I like part of the work they do is with the caregivers, because it's not just sickle cell is not just like you who has it, but for the parent it's like a full-time thing, and sometimes it's very hard for parents who have children to actually come to terms with this. I have a client who I have still failed to convince for him to join Raremark. He has still not dealt with the fact that he has a daughter who is 10 and she has sickle cells. And he's just trying to be like, I'm trying to find a solution. I want to know where it came from. I'm like, it's here. Like, it's here. But I don't appreciate the fact that his parents acknowledged he had it at a very young age. Talk to him about it, start to find like the remedies. What do I do? So like, my message is maybe to parents out there, or if you know you have friends who have kids who have it, tell it to them as early as possible so that they know. Don't be afraid to maybe think they're going to be segregated from other kids, put aside and stuff, but it's good for them to know because they're going to have it for the rest of their lives. So the earlier you know, the better, and you figure out your body, how to manage it, and yeah. So just kudos to Don and Raremark and all the people who work down there. I like the guys who shoot your podcast. Those guys, like, I wish we could get them here as. But yeah, great work, Raremark.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and in case you like the way the podcast looks, and even this one, as anything that's lousy about it is my fault. But otherwise, it's fantastic. Excuse me. But follow Digimark as well. They do fantastic work.
Yes.
Really, they do. And, it's not just labor, it's labor of love. At least that's what they tell me. So I'll take that as a given. So goodbye, and see you guys in 2024. Cheers. 2025, my God, 2025. Yes, please. You put a voice over there. 2025. See you guys in 2024.